Samueli. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle, and it is now 10 a.m. on the East Coast of the United States, which can only mean one thing. It is our weekly joint live stream, which means everybody has to stop doing whatever they're doing. Put that coffee pot down. You should have got your coffee, a few minutes ago. Now it's too late. And everybody just focus and zoom in on what we're now about to.
As hard as that may be, considering what is going on right now. Okay.
Exactly.
I mean, I feel that when we finish, it will be redundant. Okay.
there's a lot going on, and we'll get to Trump and his abrupt reversal, because we discussed Trump at some length yesterday, and then shortly after our podcast, he made an abrupt reversal on the Epstein thing, and we'll get to that in a minute. But first of all, I want to just talk about the news that seems to have broken today, which is that Poland is more or less accusing Russia of sabotage of its railway. And actually, it's already causing furor within NATO. So Poland is saying this is sabotage, bombing of our railway line. It's a railway line, of course, heading towards Ukraine. So this is a railway line that is actually transporting arms to Ukraine, which by any standard definition sounds like a legitimate military target. And Poland is not in exactly a very good place to start screaming and tearing its hair out about terrorism and sabotage and bombing. It can only be 2 weeks ago when both Prime Minister Tusk and Foreign Minister Radek Sikorski said it's perfectly, anything at all. Pipelines, any infrastructure that helps Russia, wherever it's located, they are perfectly legitimate targets. So Poland's indignation is a little strange. So let's just take a look at what the stories that have appeared today. And here we have Tusk. He sent out this tweet: blowing up the rail track on the Warsaw-Lublin route is an unprecedented act of sabotage, targeting directly the security of the Polish state and its civilians. This route is also crucially important for delivering aid to Ukraine. We will catch the perpetrators, whoever they are.
I've been on that route many when I lived there. I lived in Lublin for a couple of years, and I would take that line very, very often. Okay.
Yes.
Why pointing to Russia? Is for sabotage within? Someone wants a false flag. They want Article 5, and there's something.
No, absolutely.
The entire 90 minutes about this.
Okay. That's exactly absolutely. We don't know, but Poland is waxing indignant, and Tusk has already rushed to inspect the railway line.
Such a good way to describe the Poles, waxing indignantly. It's a very good job.
That's right. Here's Euronews. Poland's prime minister calls weekend rail line explosion near Warsaw act of sabotage.
Okay, well, first of all, what explosion, bombing? What is it? What is the forensics? Do we know?
But we don't know. As far as I know, they don't know. They just say that.
Well, an explosion could mean a lot of things. Okay.
Well, it absolutely could do that. And so, Tusk says, unfortunately, the worst fears have been confirmed. An act of sabotage has occurred on the Warsaw-Lublin route, and explosion has destroyed the railway track.
I wonder if he wrote that with a smile.
That's right. Now, the thing about destroying a railway track, I don't think you can just destroy a railway track.
Exactly. Okay. Did it hit another train? Did a truck ram it by accident?
Those things are easily repaired.
Was somebody transporting illicit explosives?
Yeah. And then goes on. Polish Defense Minister Vladislav.
A firework explosion. Thank you to the chat. Thank you. Go ahead.
Right. This Polish Defense Minister Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz said on Monday that the army plans to examine 120 kilometers of the Warsaw-Lublin-Hrubeszów line, which links the capital to Ukraine by road and rail. And then the Polish Army's Chief of General Staff, General Wiesław Kukula, said the incident had been deliberate, but did not say who he thought was responsible. The adversary has started preparations for war. They are building a certain environment here to bring about an undermining of public confidence in the government, bodies such as the armed forces and the police. And then again
Well, okay, go back
yeah.
just for a second. Very interesting here. Who's they?
No, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Who's they? The
Who's
people
they?
that want to go to war? They want to do this?
Um, well, it's very interesting. I mean, the use of the they is really. I mean, obviously what they're trying to do is to think that Russia is behind this. All of this is suggesting Russia is behind this. And the way these things work is that in no time at all, within the next 24, 48 hours, they will be saying, oh, it was Russia. Russia was behind it. You know, you see, here there's no evidence. They don't have any evidence Russia's behind it. So that's why it's, they, our worst suspicions have been confirmed. But then they're gonna say, yeah, I think Russia was behind it. It's always the same with the drones. So they first say these are very suspicious drones. Yeah, we're gonna get to the bottom of this, and then lo and behold, the media start repeating, "Oh, these are Russian drones. Russians sent this over."
Well, it's very interesting, and I'm sure there are many reports out by now, but usually they talk about casualties. Were there any
No, there
casualties?
were no casualties. No,
Oh, oh,
it was done at
oh,
night. There were no casualties.
oh, okay, okay.
None at all. Um, and but it is of a piece with with the general whipping up of fervor for war. Now, I mean, just what the Poles are saying that hey, we're using this railway line in order to deliver goods to Ukraine. Well, if you're doing that, that sounds like a legitimate target. Now, I'm not saying Russia did it or whatever, but nonetheless, I mean, this does sound like a strategic, piece of infrastructure. It's helping the Ukraine war effort, and using the logic that Tusk and Sikorsky have used themselves, I can't see that there's anything wrong with hitting that railway track. And I don't know if Russia was involved, but this at least gives Russia certain
Well,
plausible deniability. Hey, we
well, I mean,
did anything. You didn't catch anyone doing it.
yeah. Well, before we start pinning,
No, I'm
pointing.
not pinning anything
No,
on
no, no.
Russia.
I'm again, George. I'm agreeing with you. Let me have
All
my
right.
piece. I'm sure George would agree with me that the outcome of this is the hope of escalation. Now, maybe the Russians want escalation. I see no evidence of that,
No.
but I'm not a decision maker, okay? But certainly there are people and opinions in Warsaw that want an
Yes.
escalation,
Yeah.
okay? So I go from who does it benefit?
Oh, no, there's no question. That absolutely that could it could well be a false flag attack. There's no reason to rule that
Or
out.
maybe it was an accident.
It could be.
Uh,
It could be. Um, I mean, the reason that I bring up the possibility of Russia is that I'm just using the logic that Poland was using just 2 weeks ago when they were justifying hitting oil refineries in Hungary. I mean, they were saying, hey, you're refining oil from Russia. So if we blow up your refinery, that's hurting Russia, and therefore we're justified in doing it. So using that logic, I mean, basically,
exactly.
Hungary is supposed to be an ally of Poland's, just as Germany was supposed to be an ally of Poland's, and yet Poland refused to cooperate with the German authorities to hand the suspect over. So using that, then for Tusk to start, going on about, this is appalling, horrific, shocking. I've never seen anything like this. Well, hey, you're using this railway line to transport military hardware into Ukraine to kill Russians. Why wouldn't they want to sabotage this railway line?
I agree with you completely, but I doubt they did. Okay.
I also I do have my doubts as well. I mean, yeah, yeah. Um,
I mean, because the way I look at it is that um, only a losing side would do something like this. If you're winning, if you're or making progress, let's parse our words here. If you're making progress, you don't really need to do something like this.
no, you don't. Though I do think that I mean, we've discussed this before. I do think Russia sh- could and should have attacked non-Ukrainian territory. I think just to send a message to NATO. Not in a
I think that's still on the table. It's
that's
not
still on the table. I mean,
because
not
everybody, George and I are in the extreme minority here. Is that this is going to go on for a while?
right.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
nobody's taking anything to the bank here about this is like playing roulette. You think you're going to win on the first turn of the wheel? No. Okay,
That's it. That's
this is
exactly
going to be. It's going to take a lot. It's going to take more time, more death, and the outcome will be very ugly.
yes,
Meaning,
yes,
well, it won't be over. When they
yes.
say it's over, it won't be over. We
I
talked
agree.
about it.
It isn't going to be over. So today, there was a story that France has just inked a deal with Ukraine to sell them these
Good,
fighter
good for
aircraft.
them. Good for them.
Good
Okay.
for them. The financing of this deal, however, is still somewhat opaque to say the least. Also, they've signed a memorandum of understanding, but it's still up in the air as to who exactly is going to pay for this aircraft. So here's the article in I think it's Politico. Yeah, Politico. And it says France plans to supply Ukraine with up to 100 fighter
Yeah.
fighter jets,
Right.
and then it says that 100, and then Kiev's commitment to purchase the Rafales was included in a letter of intent signed by Macron and Zelensky upon the latter's arrival at the military airport, and the delivery is projected to be made over the next 10 years.
Years.
And then this is on top of that Sweden deal that was recently, and then the pact also lays the groundwork for Kiev to acquire this SAMP-T air defense systems, radars for air defense system. And then Macron says this is a new step. The agreement reflects France's will to place its defense sector at the service of Ukraine's and Europe's security. And then but the interesting thing is that naturally the corruption issue did come up. So, well, what about this corruption? I mean, all this money being mishandled. So the Politico says, well, the deal in normal times would constitute a political win for Zelensky, but the Ukrainian president is still weathering the fallout from a massive corruption scandal that saw his close associates accused of courting $100 million worth of kickbacks in the energy sector. When asked about the scandal, Macron said he trusts President Zelensky to make reforms and fight against
This
corruption.
is Politico, right?
This is Politico.
Only Politico can courting $100 million. Courting it, not
Yes.
stealing it, not embezzling it. They're courting it. I mean, was this a date? Okay.
So that I mean, that just kind of confirms what we've been saying. They intend to continue with this. Um,
Exactly. Exactly.
they have no intention
And
of
that's why the Ukrainians will keep doing it because they're allowed to.
exactly. So the whole corruption issue of last week, it just means nothing. It's like, yeah, that's fine.
It's
Yeah,
yesterday's news by
yeah,
now, everyone.
yes,
Okay.
yeah, that's right. So they just pay. Here's the nice
I mean, look, look,
100 fighter aircraft. Where are we going to get the money from? Well,
look.
we'll steal these assets.
The what was the word? The disgust was the word. European. It was political. European leaders disgusted. I think it
Mhm.
was.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if you're disgusted by this kind of corruption, which the EU, of course, is very corrupt, okay, they tolerate a lot of it, okay, then why isn't there a universal call for an audit of all of the money that's gone to Ukraine? I mean, that's the least you could do. Again, you're not going to get the money back.
Right.
Okay, it's probably in Swiss bank accounts by now.
Yes.
Okay, but why don't you call for an audit? No one's called for an
No,
audit.
of
That
course
tells me
not.
they're not serious. They're not
Of course not.
serious.
Of course not. Of course not. You remember they had a vote. You remember they had a vote in the Senate about an audit. I think
Yeah, they
Senator Rand Paul wanted an audit,
no,
and
that was an amendment to a bill, and
right,
it was not passed.
yeah,
They said no, we won't pass it with this
no, no,
amendment.
no, 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 no audit. But of course, if you don't want to know something, then you're going to make sure that you don't know it. I mean,
You
basically,
won't
they
pass.
don't want to find out just how much money has been stolen, and so therefore they don't want to ask too many questions. Otherwise, it'll just be too embarrassing. If with,
Well, I think a lot of it is kicked back,
yeah,
personally.
yeah, I think so. But in the meantime, when we're talking about Europe, we have this issue that about Germany, which is now seriously talking about this, bringing back conscription.
Oh, and George, did you know that this could be, well, I guess the summer that it could be the last summer of peace.
The last summer of peace. Well,
It's could be the last summer of peace. I hope
yes,
you enjoyed it, everybody, because it could be the last summer of peace. This came
yes,
out of the German Defense Ministry in the last
last
news.
summer of peace. Okay. So it's a kind of like nostalgia. People who had that nostalgia for the summer of 1914.
14, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Remember when? Yeah, the cliffs of Dover. It was so
yeah,
nice.
yeah.
Apparently, it was a very sunny summer. Okay.
Very exactly, a very sunny summer. In England, they were playing cricket on the lawns, and the beautiful, charming young ladies were taking tea on the lawn as they were watching the cricket. And that was that. So this could well be something of that nature. But so here is this story from Politico again, and of course they're big enthusiasts for this. It says Germany's rearmament upends Europe's power balance as Berlin again becomes Europe's leading military power.
Wonderful.
And Warsaw face a massive political shift. And then it says as Germany aims to become Europe's predominant military power, the political balance is shifting. In France, there's a scramble to stay relevant, while in Poland, Germany's rearmament is stirring old ghosts and creating a sense that a Berlin Warsaw alliance might be the most effective way to keep Russia at bay. So that Poland back to being Germany's junior partner as it was in the 1930s.
Right, right.
Um, as Germany, with Europe's largest army equipped with cutting edge tanks, missiles, and jets, is a far cry from the shambolic Bundeswehr, derided for its low morale and outdated equipment. The military power is tied to political and economic heft, and Europe will have to adapt to a dominant Germany. So now, just keep in mind, Politico is owned by the Axel Springer Verlag, so this is, they're quite enthusiastic about all of this. By 2029, Germany is expected to spend 153 billion euros per year on defense, about 3.5% of GDP. France, by comparison, plans to reach about 80 billion euros by 2030.
Oh, that's a pipe dream. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think so. And then Poland aims to spend this 44 billion euros on defense this year, 4.7% of GDP. And then it says this.
Well, I mean, spending money is not. It's one indicator. It's one data point. What you need is a vertically integrated defense sector
Right.
all across Europe. That's not going to happen.
Well, I
This
don't
is
know. I mean, if Europe,
that
if
will take
all right.
decade to
Well,
do.
it'll take some time, but there's no reason why they can't do it. I mean, if they're determined to do it, I mean, they've done this before. I mean, it was a while ago. Obviously, I mean, they've been doing very little for some
You know
time.
what I'm
But in
speaking of?
principle, there's no reason why if they're determined to do it, there's no reason
I'm
why they
talking
can't
about
do
NATO, not just Germany.
it.
Okay,
Right.
I'm talking about I mean, it's a potpourri Who's doing missiles? Who's doing
Right,
tanks? And
right, right.
I
No,
mean,
but
what I'm saying is, if NATO, European NATO, wants to be effective, it's good to, it can spend money, it can go into debt. Okay, fine, but an integrated military industrial complex that takes a lot of planning, a lot of work, and a lot of integration and cooperation.
right.
They're not even close to that.
Well,
We
but
all
they,
know
yeah, right.
it's NATO military in Europe is American military.
Right, it's America, but my view is just simply that if they are determined to do it, then there's no reason why they can't do it. That doesn't mean that they will do it, but there is no reason why they can't if they are determined to do it. It seems to me that they are determined to do this. I mean, all the signs are the centralization of power within the European Commission. With Ursula von der Leyen, grabbing more and more power for herself. With setting up this intelligence agency under her control. And then this is an amazing thing. I mean, for Germany to be talking in this way would have been just inconceivable even a few
Look,
years ago, let
let-
alone a few decades ago.
to put it into context, because of the years George and I were born, and we both, though we didn't know each other at the time,
Right.
were studying European politics and the geopolitics of what would become the European Union. So I'm echoing what George just said. This is extraordinary. There was nothing, there wasn't even a hint of this 20 years ago.
Right.
Okay?
No,
10
not
years.
not no, not at all. And that's why I think this is quite it's quite, I mean, these are all, each of these are just steps that they are taking towards preparing for war. I mean, this is like, you take one bit and another bit and another bit, and says, well, it seems like there's a plan here to go to war, whether 2030, 2035, but this is what they're planning on. And if you're a Russian leader, you have to take this very seriously.
Have to take it
This
seriously.
is, they are embarking on this project, and if they're determined to do it, then I think they'll get it done.
Well,
I mean,
but
Germans are pretty good at getting things done if they're determined to do it.
okay, well, this is really, really early, and if this podcast exists 10 years from now, we'll be discussing what we said
Right,
today.
right, right.
I'm more doubtful, but what I think is interesting, considering the rhetoric and how much money they want to throw around or waste, they're doing it with an eye that the United States is not going to be there. Now, that's interesting in itself.
Yes, I agree. I agree that's their.
Well, that's the shift. That's the
Yes, I
shift.
think I think that's the plan. On the other hand, for Europe to be ready to wage war without the United States, that's going to take a long time. Um, so that's why I think that they're still ultimately they want the United States involved because
George, you started out with this
yes,
train story from
right,
Poland. That
exactly.
means they still are hoping that the Americans will
That
come
they,
against.
exactly that they want the Americans involved, because without the Americans, then that is a huge project, and that you're not going to be ready for a long time. But I do think that they feel that, well, Trump will be gone within 2 or 3 years, and Trump has turned out to be not as much of a problem, as much of a disturbance as they were afraid he would be before January the 20th. But even so, they would much rather have somebody, some Marco Rubio type, or Tom Cotton, or somebody who's going to be absolutely there, for them, repeating all their mindless slogans. But at this stage, I think they probably feel that they need to show the Americans, look, we are serious. We really are serious. Look at what we're doing.
We're grown-ups. We're
We're
grown-ups.
grown-ups, exactly. You told us that we needed to cough up more money, and look, we're coughing up more money. So now you have to take us really seriously. I think that seems to have worked with Trump. He's always boasting, "Hey, look, NATO was flat on its back when I took over. Now everyone is contributing so much more, and that was all me. I did it all." So now Trump yesterday said something quite interesting. He suddenly turned around and said that he's kind of in favor of this legislation that Lindsey Graham and the rest in the GOP are planning on about the 500% tariffs on countries doing business with Russia. So let's just take a look at um, at what. Let me. Yeah.
Uh-oh, that's Tucker.
Yes, we'll talk about him in a moment. But here's Trump.
Mr. President, is it time for Congress to move legislation that puts pressure on Russia and puts pressure on Putin?
Well, I hear they're doing that, and that's okay with me. They're passing legislation, or the Republicans are putting in legislation that very tough, sanctioning, et cetera, on any country doing business with Russia. They may add Iran to that, as you know. I suggested it. So any country that does business with Russia will be very severely sanctioned. We may add Iran to the formula. Yeah.
All right, so that's Trump was going to apparently is going to support this legislation that he hadn't in the past. This is the Lindsey Graham 500% tariffs. That seems very, very problematic, on a number of levels. 500% tariffs. That is some serious tariffs.
Well, it's just
That will,
sanctioning.
that will presumably just bring all U.S. China business to an end. I mean,
Yeah.
500% tariffs. I mean, nothing will be affordable with tariffs or that way. So that would effectively bring all U.S. China business to an end, and then you'd have to say, for what reason? For Ukraine? You want to bring about a serious economic crisis. That would bring a serious economic crisis in the U.S. with 500% tariffs on Chinese, Indian goods. And for Ukraine, that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, I don't take it. George. Ever since we can pinpoint it was after the Budapest moment. Ever since then, I'm focusing on other things. I mean, this weaving and wobbly and all of that 500 maybe not. It's so stale right now, and the world is moving on. Okay, I mean, Trump essentially wants to sanction slash tariff the whole world over Ukraine. That's crazy. It's just
Right.
crazy. Okay,
Yes.
and it shows a desperation on his part. It's not nuanced. Okay, I mean, he's given up. He's adopted the Biden policy, and he's outsourced a lot of it to Europe. You and I have chronicled this.
Right. Yes, he has. But it is very strange because he has indeed adopted the Biden policy, but without the Biden ideological rationale. Because the Biden people, they really hated Russia. I mean, this was Biden is an old cold warrior, a NATO booster. Blinken, same thing. Just he's a Russophobe. He has his own family background or whatever. So they were determined to inflict as much pain on Russia as possible. That was an ideological. But for Trump to continue with this, that doesn't make any sense. He doesn't have any of that Russophobia. He's not obsessed with
Yeah,
Russia. He's not a Cold War obsessive.
yeah, but what he's doing, and I know we're going to shift to domestic politics shortly. It's bend the knee. That's all it is. You're right. It's not ideological. It's you must submit.
Right.
And in maybe a few decades ago, that might have still worked. Okay, as someone explained it to me once, it's charm. If that doesn't work, then harm. And he's given up on charm.
He's given up on.
And we see this mirrored in domestic politics too.
Yes, he has, but but it's hard to understand exactly what that is about, because we say, okay, well, he's parceled out to the Europeans the task of waging this war against Russia. Okay, well, that makes a certain logical sense. Yeah, let the Europeans deal with Russia. We'll deal with China. But that's
But
not what he's doing is,
What is happening? Yeah.
leave aside that he's not dealing with China. He's kind of getting bogged down in Latin America and or the Middle East or whatever. But now he's not even doing. He himself is getting U.S. involved with this war against Russia, and it's not clear why he's doing it. I mean, only a few weeks ago you were talking about your great relations with Putin, and you're hoping to meet with Putin and whatever.
Yeah, but
Even
George,
your great relations with Xi.
when he's asked these questions on Air Force One or on the tarmac, it's off the cuff. And
Yes.
did you think this through? Remember, there were arguments against the 500% tariff. What has changed, Mr. President? And he'll just say, "Well, it's too bad because I had a good relationship with Putin." And oh, by the way, the ballroom is coming along. Okay.
Well,
That's why it's hard for me to be as laser focused as we have been over the last few years, because there's nothing to grab onto to analyze. It's just, tarmac talk.
no, I agree with you. I mean, you'd have to think that in the Oval Office, there are going to be people telling him, this is going to be really bad. I mean, this is, you do this, it's going to have a recession. It's going to lead to a jacking up of prices throughout the country. I mean, 500% tariffs means essentially there's no U.S.-China trade. I mean, that's it. I mean, there'll be no trade at all under those circumstances. So therefore, everything is going to just shoot up in price. When you're already underwater because of people are complaining about affordability. I mean, that's what he's talking about now. Everyone's
affordability.
The new buzzword, affordability. That's not the time to start talking about 500% tariffs.
And at the end of the day, everyone, yes, there has been an element. We've seen it, I think, George, 5 election cycles now. Being anti-war is a winner. You win. You get votes for that.
Exactly.
But what is come home to roost is affordability.
Right.
This is, and I know we'll shift to it. This is the angst. It's just not all these foreign entanglements that people are so tired of. People are suffering, and this is what the hope of MAGA and the election of last year was all about. It was really all about affordability, and it's not being addressed.
It's not. It isn't being addressed. But you're right also about the election cycles, because you keep in mind Obama, peace candidate in 2008, 2012 again, undeservedly, because Romney was just such a spastic that he started trying to goad Obama into being more belligerent, and then Obama was able to do the whole, hey, the 1980s are calling, they want their foreign policy back. I mean, how can you be that stupid as to walk into a trap like that? And so that was in the 2016. Trump obviously was promising end to wars. He did that in 2020 as well. I mean, he's going to end Syria entanglement, the Afghanistan entanglement, and so on. So election after election, it's the candidate who offers an end to wars who prevails. All these people, all the Tom Cottons and the rest, they fail. They every election they fail. Tom Cotton, Marco Rubio, when he ran in 2016, take on, we're going to fight Putin and whatever. That was already in 2016. They already wanted to fight Putin, and so that's what makes this so bizarre. That Trump, having worked this out, is kind of going back on his own.
And we discussed this yesterday. I'm open to ideas. What happened? George and I more or less pinpointed it at the beginning of the summer.
Right. That's right. So anyway, since we spoke yesterday, he made an abrupt reversal on Jeffrey Epstein. So he was resisting the release of all the Epstein files, and the Republicans were clearly planning on having a major vote this week. I think it's going to happen. This vote this week
tomorrow
on the release. Yeah, tomorrow exactly. To release the files, and Trump, I think, having realized that he's going to lose this vote and lose it heavily, reversed course and said, "No, I'm for it. I'm for it." And he sent out a truth with characteristic for him, and he says here that, as I said on Friday night aboard Air Force One to the fake news media, House Republicans should vote to release the Epstein files because we have nothing to hide, and it's time to move on from this Democrat hoax perpetrated by the radical left lunatics in order to deflect from the great success of the Republican Party, including our recent victory on the shutdown. The Department of Justice has already turned over tens of thousands of pages to the public on Epstein, are looking at various Democratic operatives, Bill Clinton, Reid Hoffman, Larry Summers, etc., and their relationships to Epstein. And the House Oversight Committee can have whatever they are legally entitled to. I don't care. All I do care about is that Republicans get back on point,
Oh
which
yeah.
is the economy, affordability, where we are winning big. No, you're not. Our victory on reducing inflation from the highest level in history to practically nothing, bringing down prices for the American people, delivering historic tax cuts, gaining trillions of dollars of investment in America, a record, rebuilding of our military, securing our border, deporting
Oh,
criminals.
all right. We went through this yesterday. When you're
Yes.
explaining, you're
Yeah,
losing.
and then finally, once he's gone through this list, it says nobody cared about Jeffrey Epstein when he was alive. And if the Democrats had anything, they would have released it before our landslide election victory, which is, of course, correct, which is why his attempt to stonewall the release of the material was so bizarre, because you're absolutely right. If there was anything damaging on Trump, absolutely the Democrat DOJ would have released this information. That would have sunk Trump's, absolutely, much more so than those ridiculous prosecutions. I mean, if they had goods showing that he was cavorting with underage girls, that's it. That would have ended his.
Well, I think, and much can happen even after the vote. Okay, much can happen. The DOJ can easily say, "Oh, we can't release this or that because
Oh
they're
yeah, that absolutely. Yeah,
ongoing investigation." Oh, the stonewalling is not over.
no,
Okay,
no, I agree. There's a
and,
lot of things.
and it's not going to look. It's not going to pay him any dividends whatsoever.
No,
This is
that's right.
so wrong-headed. I mean, it just
Right.
in real time we're watching the complete collapse of a presidency. Okay,
Well, that's right. But
with his constituency.
right, but that's the thing, that there's all sorts of ways, and that was always the case, that there was all sorts of ways in which they can prevent the release of all the material. Because first of all, you can bring up the national security issue, because hey, there was some national security matters that involved Epstein. He was dealing with Ehud Barak. He was dealing with other major figures, so we could have to hold off on that. And then, of course, there are all the legal cases. We can't release the material because that might affect all the various civil and criminal litigation that's ongoing. So there's all sorts of ways in which you can prevent the release of material. That's why there was never really any much sense for this obduracy, given that
Yes.
they have all this means at their disposal to prevent the release of everything.
Well, what he's created now, and they what Speaker Johnson is suggesting. Again, he's a real slime ball. This guy. He wants unanimous consent because he doesn't want to put Republicans on the spot. Okay, because that's why Trump did this, because he would have found out, and we still don't know how this is going to play out procedurally, but Trump has found himself. It's a pendulum is moved. People are what they want to do is there are those that want to put distance between themselves and Trump now, not looking for. They don't want his help in the midterms. They want a
Right.
distance, and they are showing they don't fear him anymore.
Right.
And
So yeah, all right.
the-
So here we have he
you know,
then goes.
there you go. There you go. I was just about to mention it.
That's
Go
right.
ahead.
And so but after he'd sent this truth out,
This is
he sent
disgusting.
out another truth. Wacky Marjorie traitor Brown. Remember, green turns to brown where there is rot involved, is working overtime to try and portray herself as a victim when in actuality she's the cause of all her own problems. The fact is, nobody cares about this traitor to our country. Traitor to our country. You know, when you throw around words like that, I mean, it was really appalling when during Russiagate, you know, you had everybody going around saying, "Oh, Trump is a traitor. Trump's a traitor." You know, Trump's working for Putin and so on. It was disgusting. I mean, you're going around calling people traitors, but I mean, you know, that is something else. It said just traitor to our country. I mean, it's just mind-boggling that
Well, and
you say something like that.
what did she do? She went on one of the Sunday programs and she apologized for her participation in upping the rhetoric, upping the temperature. Wow,
Right.
that's classy. That's really
Right. No,
classy. Okay, I
exactly.
mean, how many more feet? I mean, Trump shot himself in the foot multiple times now. I mean, this is purely inexplicable for me, really.
No,
Okay,
it is.
and I
It,
think
it,
this is a tipping point. I don't see him
it
recovering.
is. It's a very strange thing for him to do, because I haven't seen any evidence that there was anything untoward about his relationship with Epstein. They were friends many years ago in the 90s. This has all been known. I mean, you see the stuff in YouTube, how they were very friendly, and he went to a party at Mar-a-Lago and so on. So there's nothing there. And these emails that were released last week, you know, there's nothing in them. So it's a very strange for Trump just to get so
Well, I think, George, my
upset and indignant about something that is damaging him for no reason at all.
I think my theory of this, and I am not one of these Epstein fanatics. Those that watch this podcast know that George and I have been very circumspect about it. Okay, but now this is seeped into the political realm, and that's why we're talking about it. I think it's all about ego. His ego will be hurt. He probably had contact with Jeffrey Epstein on the periphery at the
Right.
very. I mean, this is a club of people. They all know each other. And so he's afraid of the embarrassment. Oh, I
Right.
haven't had anything to do with this guy since blah, blah, blah. Well, maybe you did in a tangential way, okay? And is that illegal?
I mean,
I don't
no,
think
it's not
so.
illegal. I mean, no, I
His
don't think
ego
so.
is leading him on
Right,
this.
right. Yep. No, I think so. I think, but also I think it's clear that Epstein, you know,
Was not his
understandably,
friend.
he's
in
not
the end.
Epstein is not a friend. So in 2011, when he's saying, "Oh, Trump knew about the girls," whatever that may mean, right? You know, Trump was already running. Everyone assumed he was going to run in 2012, and so he was obviously wanting to do as much damage to Trump as possible, because he's just resentful. I mean, you were once friends, and now Trump is planning a presidential run. You know, you want to hurt him, and I think he wanted to hurt him later when they had that guy, that Michael Cohen. He was testifying, and he had that woman, that awful woman. She's not a congresswoman, the delegate from the Virgin Islands, Stacey
Wait,
Plaskett.
Plaskett, yeah.
Plaskett, yes, and they're messaging each other like girls together, all girls together. Oh, I really like the way your outfit today. Oh, thank you very much. You're looking really nice today. Oh, thank you so much. And then what shall I ask? Because I'm going to be asking. It's going to be my turn soon. I said, well, I mean, he was obviously just basically, how do I hurt Trump as much as possible? His conversations with Michael Wolff as well was all about how do I hurt Trump. Interestingly, which hasn't really been explained, is the role of Steve Bannon in all of this. I mean, the great friend of Trump's was
All
very
those hours of video.
hours of videos, and clearly they were very close.
I want to react to something in the chat here. MTG, definitely a loose cannon clown. I don't read it that way. George and I we're not supporters of Marjorie Taylor Greene. We're not.
No,
We're not.
right.
Okay. I'm simply not. I disagree with her on many things.
Right,
okay?
but also
what I'm talking about is the political environment here. She is far more adroit politically than the president of the United States right now.
right.
Okay.
No, I think so.
And who is dividing the MAGA movement? It's not
No,
marching to the green.
exactly. And when we call somebody a loose cannon, you say, well, yeah, but sometimes you need a loose cannon, particularly when you're going to war. I mean, you want somebody who is going to be a loose cannon saying, what's the rush for this war? Why exactly are we bombing Iran? What's Iran done to us? And I think you say, oh, she's a loose cannon. Yeah, because a president is rushing to a war that he said he promised to keep America out of. He's not getting any kind of congressional authorization. He hasn't made the case before the country. So yeah, I think a loose cannon is indeed a very healthy thing to have. But anyway, the other thing that I wanted to bring up is this documentary that very short documentary, about 35 minutes, by Tucker Carlson about the would-be assassin of Trump from last July in Butler, Pennsylvania, Thomas Crooks. Now, what's so interesting about this documentary? Because there's a lot of questions, obviously, that come out of it. But the really big question is, why are we finding this out from Tucker Carlson? Why aren't we finding all this information out from the due authorities, the investigative authorities? So let's just watch a little bit of that documentary, and just to get a sense of what Tucker was saying. Let me see. That's Trump.
Here's what we do know. The digital comments we obtained were posted between 2019 and 2020, when Thomas Crooks was between 15 and 17 years old. They show two things. First, that Thomas Crooks was not some secretive lone wolf who never warned anyone that he was planning violence, just the opposite. Years before he showed up in Butler, Crooks was leaving a detailed digital trail of violent threats, including calls for assassinations and political violence. Second, they show a man who started out as a radical Trump supporter, whose views on the president transformed, changed completely during COVID. The FBI lied about that fact and pretended that Crooks was a right-winger. At 11:35 p.m. on July 19, 2019, in response to an MSNBC video, Crooks wrote, quote, Ilhan Omar and others are invaders and should honestly be killed and their dead bodies sent back. At 1:17 a.m. on July 20th, 2019, Crooks commented on the CNN video. He said Donald Trump was the literal definition of patriotism. 7 hours later, he commented on an MSNBC video. He wrote, I hope a quick, painful death to all the deplorable immigrants and anti-Trump congresswomen who don't deserve anything this country has given them. That evening, on a separate MSNBC video, he wrote, quote, every one of the Trump-hating Democrats deserve to have their heads chopped off and put on stakes for the world to see what happens when you fuck with America.
So the thing that's right away striking as he reads these things out is this is very violent language. Now, if you make a habit of talking like this, violent language, issuing threats, you come to the attention of the authorities. Very quickly, you come to the attention.
George, even if you and I, in a very opaque way, I'm not even going to give an example, okay? Right. If we in the most opaque way called for violence, we would be shut down in a nanosecond. The algorithm would pick it up and you're gone. Yep. How in the world did he do this? This is inexplicable.
Exactly.
These sorts of comments continued for months and became increasingly violent. The following day, Crooks responded to a CBS Evening News video about the squad saying this, quote, this is going to be blatantly racist, but I hope Trump has these people murdered. Crooks openly called for dictatorship and putting, quote, Hispanics back in their place. He warned that if Democrats win in 2020, quote, they won't be in there for long because unlike the Dems, we have guns and lots of them. In one comment, Crooks noted that, quote, 50 million Americans with AR-15s will make quick work of any blockades the government can put in to protect the White House. He left multiple references to Mao Zedong's famous line, the only real political power comes from the barrel of a gun. On September 30th, 2019, Crooks responded to comments about a potential civil war, saying this, most rioters don't bring assault rifles and body armor like we would, and we wouldn't be going to the streets, we'd be going to Washington. At this point, one user named Hyperpandas responded saying, quote, "Law enforcement will thank you for grouping up and being so visible. It'll make your arrest so much simpler."
Yep.
Crooks responded saying, "Cops can't arrest me if they're all dead," before adding, "Even an untrained man with an AR-15 is dangerous. You think Adam Lanza or any school shooter trained? Nope." If you navigate to that YouTube page today, you can still see identical contextual comments and people referring to Crooks, including one user who wrote this: "You were on YouTube threatening to shoot government officials. I sure hope the FBI is monitoring social media for violent nutcases." That exchange is still available on Internet Archive websites.
So you can see how, other YouTube users are alert just as we are and say, hey, you're basically signaling to the authorities who you are and what you're doing. You basically, they're going to come and arrest you. I mean, everybody knows this, and yet he just continues.
Yeah, and I got banned from Twitter for quoting Barack Obama.
Exactly. That's right. But then this is where it gets interesting, because he then abruptly changes his position from being this fervent, violent Trump supporter. So suddenly he becomes a fervent, violent Trump hater.
But the FBI didn't see that before the shooting? That's hard to believe. On various occasions, Crooks openly said things like, "Mueller should be hanged along with the rest of the Democrats involved in that witch hunt," and "I always believed being patriotic was lining up a bunch of socialist Jews, like the ones who booed Trump, and blasting their useless brains out with an AR." And yet, early 2020, Crooks seemed to change radically. On January 23rd of that year, he referred to, quote, "Trump's stupidity." He began to mock the concept of the deep state. He suggested it was a code word used by Trump supporters for, quote, "anyone who disagrees with the right wing." Suddenly, he sounded like an MSNBC commentator. In February of 2020, he called out Trump supporters as, quote, "too brainwashed to realize how dumb you are. I mean, literally, you guys sound like a cult at times." That same day, he called Trump and his supporters, quote, "racist." It was an amazing transformation. That April, during the peak phase of the coronavirus lockdowns, Crooks wrote, quote, "It seems that you people don't understand that sometimes public safety comes before your personal rights. Are you not quarantining one member of your family to save the rest?"
It's a different person.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, a different person, or, somebody had got to him. I mean, it's like, and it does seem like at some point somebody did get to him, because they stopped. All these, he'd been this an avid, text writer, suddenly stops. So then you think, well, why did you suddenly stop?
But I find it really strange, someone his age watching CNN, CBS. I didn't know people his age actually watched.
Yes, there is that. There is that. It's a little like people saying about the messages of that the Charlie Kirk killer. They said, "Hey, nobody talks that. Or people of that age don't talk like that." I don't know, because I don't know people that age, but so hey, that's just wrong language. But you're right. I mean, do they watch MSNBC? I mean,
I thought only people over 70 watch that.
I think, well, that's the demographic.
If so, you were not a patriot and you weren't protecting anything. Around this time, the new left-wing version of Thomas Crooks became very critical of conservative media. He said at one point, quote, "going to a Chinese New Year's party in America isn't putting you at risk for coronavirus, because, believe it or not, viruses don't spread through race like Tucker Carlson probably told you." That May, as state officials across the country overhauled election systems to promote mail-in voting, Crooks attacked Republican concerns about voter fraud as, quote, "ignorant." 4 months later, in August 2020, his tone had shifted even further to the left. He said, quote, "I believe the outcome will be irrelevant." In response to the same video, Thomas Crooks issued what sounds a lot like a digital manifesto. Quote, "In my opinion, the only way to fight the government is with terrorism-style attacks. Sneak a bomb into an essential building and set it off before anyone sees you. track down any important people or politicians, military leaders, etc., and try to assassinate them. Any sort of head-to-head fight is suicide, and even ambush or surprise attacks likely aren't going to end well. These remarks, especially
Right. So
I mean, I don't know what platform that is. Okay,
I think that's still on YouTube. That was
Yeah, that's
commentary on
YouTube.
YouTube. Yeah.
Oh God, I've been banned from YouTube. Okay,
Yeah.
but I mean, where is the moderation there? I'm sure other people in this time period, particularly during COVID, people are being thrown off left, right, and
Yes.
center.
Yeah.
Okay, and
Yeah.
not this guy.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. This was at the height of the deplatforming, and so yeah, he continues with issuing these violent threats against the government. I mean, this is at the height of alertness about people issuing violent threats against the government, and then he just continues. Now, they obviously, having exposed this, you think, well, why didn't we hear about this?
I thought he had no social media footprint. We were told that.
Exactly. So the FBI, launched a preemptive attack against Tucker Carlson because Tucker had
Yeah,
promised.
they made an account just to counter him.
That's right. So let's just take a look at what they said initially. So this was for this is Tucker advertising the show. He's saying the FBI told us Thomas Crooks tried to kill Donald Trump last summer, but somehow had no online footprint. The FBI lied, and we can prove it because we have his posts. The question is why. And the story tomorrow. And then the FBI said, this FBI has never said Thomas Crooks had no online footprint, ever.
Well, maybe this is pure semantics, but
That's
why?
what it sounds like. Yeah.
Why did they say this FBI?
Yeah. Exactly.
Why didn't the FBI? Why didn't they say the FBI?
That's right. Exactly.
No, but this FBI.
That's right. You're right. You're absolutely right. This FBI is exactly. I mean, why? It's semantic, and even as you read this is very legalistic. So they had no online footprint. Ever. So what did you say? And then,
Well, I mean, who do I believe? That FBI? This
right,
FBI?
that's right. And so then, this was community noted. And it says, in a July 30th, 2024 Senate hearing, FBI Deputy Director Paul Abate disclosed a social media account believed to be associated with the shooter. Abate went on to describe a general absence of other information to date from social media. So, it's one of those things, it's a legalistic, that's why they said, hey, I mean, this is what the guy said. We believe to be associated with the shooter, general absence of other information. But the fact is that the FBI did not disclose anything of the nature that Tucker Carlson exposed. I mean, this is Tucker Carlson. Well, why didn't the FBI disclose any of this? And then Kash Patel, after the documentary showing, Kash Patel sent out this tweet. Crooks case overview. Over 480 FBI employees involved in Thomas Crooks investigation.
Sorry, I'm going to go back to my crossword puzzle, George. Okay.
Exactly. This is going to take some time. They're trying to impress us with this 480.
No, I'm not
doesn't mean anything.
at all. Jeez, you're insulting our intelligence.
Exactly. Employees conducted over 1,000 interviews. 1,000 interviews. Addressed over 2,000 public tips. Analyzed data extracted from 13 seized digital devices, reviewed nearly 500,000 digital files collected, processed, and synchronized hundreds of hours of video footage, analyzed financial activity from 10 different accounts, and examined data associated with 25 social media or online forum accounts. And you still haven't shown us anything. I mean,
yeah, where is
we
it?
We had to wait for Tucker Carlson.
Sorry. We live in an age where I'm not taking you at your word.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. one lingering problem I have, and Tucker, I encourage everyone to look at it. It's like 35 minutes long,
Yeah,
and he
yeah,
ends it in the most stellar fashion.
right,
Like 25 questions he
right.
has. Okay,
That's
it's
yeah,
very well done. But
yeah.
George, why hasn't Trump pushed this? I mean, he
Mm,
comes into office, didn't he say first order? I want this on my desk in a week. I
right.
want to know everything.
That's
He
right.
hasn't
That's
talked
right.
about it at all.
No, no, it's very strange. Very strange that he hasn't pushed this, and he's been asked. And I think Tucker featured there was that Brett Baer had asked him about, hey, we know very little about this person, and Trump said, yeah, yeah, we got some really great people working
Yeah.
on it. Fantastic, everyone's fantastic. He's a fantastic person. Well, what has happened? Because nobody believes that this young man who was 20 years old has no online footprint. There was just nobody believes that he didn't have social media accounts. That's 20-year-olds have absolutely have social media accounts. So it makes no sense. And then of course, we have everything that happened on that day, and Tucker mentions that, it was a very strange day. I mean, he has a drone, he sends out a drone, and then
Had a drone for 11 minutes. Oh, and I don't know the exact term, reconnaissance the FBI has, anti-drone
yes,
reconnaissance. I'm
yeah,
sure I'll be corrected here.
yeah.
It was turned off.
It was turned off. Yeah, it was turned off. Just
And,
when he was
and,
when he just at the exact moment when he was sending this drone to surveil the area.
well, and they after the shooter started shooting, he was instantly killed. I mean, so you didn't say, "Hey, where did that come from?" No, they knew
No, no, no.
exactly.
They killed him right away. But of course, the bizarre thing, and we knew it at the time, is that people in the crowd, many people in the crowd, were pointing to him. Hey, there's a guy with a gun on the roof. Look, there's a guy, and then nothing happened. And he was the suspicious character, and then they lost track of him. He was up on the roof, and they kind
And
of let him
afterwards,
stay on the roof.
the FBI itself cleaned up the crime
Yeah,
scene,
they cleaned up the crime
which
scene.
is atypical for the FBI. They outsource it. Okay,
Right,
so
right. Yeah,
I mean, these are questions that need to be answered. Why do you think people talk about these things endlessly? Because the authorities are the biggest impediment to trying to understand what happened.
yeah.
What
That's
I
very
mean,
true.
they fuel this culture of suspicion.
Well, exactly. The point is that what they're trying to persuade us is, oh well, there's nothing to be had here. This is the lone assassin, and there's nothing to be had. No one is buying this. No one is buying the idea that this
What was
young man had no online presence. There's absolutely no one's going to buy that, and that he did all this. You know, where did he train? I mean, we who helped him? Did he have no contacts? I mean, if you have an online presence, generally you start making contacts with people. People are going to notice you, and they're going to communicate with you.
he went to a gun range. A lot of people go there. I mean,
That's
anyone.
right, exactly. There's a gun range that FBI people use. That the gun range that he went to, and he was obviously a pretty decent shot. I mean, he almost killed Trump, so he knew how to use a gun.
Okay, well, George, we don't really peddle much in conspiracy theory because I only want to deal with facts, not with conjecture. But we can put that in abeyance for the moment. Um, how do you explain all of this? I mean, I suppose it's possible just incompetence and lying and covering your backside. We see
Right.
this all of the time. That Service lady was, I mean, what did they hire her from the circus? I mean, she was up to his like waist. I mean, what's that, that could just be, but I
Yes,
mean, but what it was it a message to scare Trump?
could be. It could be. I mean, that's a possibility. But I mean, generally, from what we know about what goes on online, is that the authorities, they identify somebody who has violent psychotic aspirations, and then they mold him. They turn that person in the direction that they want. We've seen that, with the Islamic terrorists. We've seen that in the case of, persuading them with
Now, somebody obviously flipped him. Okay.
exactly, with the Fed napping, with Governor Chris Whitmer. You persuade people. You work on them. Hey, these are people who have obviously filled with deep hatred. So let's see
It
how
looks
we
like
can turn that hatred in a direction that we want it to turn it.
it looks like he was groomed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah,
Well, why? Okay, okay. Tucker did what Tucker said is that a highly professional investigative person could have all done this themselves. You don't need the FBI to do that. You can do this.
Right,
Individuals can do it on their own. Okay.
right, right.
So, I mean, if there's is Dan Bongino sitting next to Kash Patel being interviewed, I mean, it looked like, look at him. He's sweating. He's
Right.
nervous. He's
Yes.
stiff. And he's like,
Yes.
and as Kash said, that's his boss. Okay. I mean, I watched enough of Bongino on Fox. That was not him. He was terrified. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I mean, just because you get used to someone's online posture, okay, and that was very, very different. If there's no there, then release all this information.
Well, that's right. Yeah, but let's keep in mind
I'm sorry. And I'm sorry. Kash Patel did an odious thing. We can't release it all because there's a legal there's a trial going on. What trial? The guy's dead.
there's no trial.
Who's on trial?
Who's on
I mean,
trial?
the
That's right.
interviewer should have said, "Hey, stop, slow down. What
Right.
trial?"
That's right.
He never
Right.
said what the trial is. What
Yep.
trial is going on that you can't release this information?
Right.
What trial?
Right, right. But also in this case, he had a number of social media accounts. This is only one, so there's still social media accounts that Tucker hasn't been able to break into. So there may be a lot more information to be had. So Kash Patel sending this message out, then you're basically just leaving a lot of questions. Why haven't any of these messages been released to the public? Just simply saying, oh, he has no online presence, which is what most people said. He's no online presence, and that he wasn't political. And that's very important because people have all repeated since last July, oh, he wasn't political. This wasn't a political assassination. He's just some kid, some crazy kid. He's obviously very political. I mean, he's loony in his politics, but he's a highly political person. I mean, very, very obsessed with politics. So that was also a lie to suggest, oh, he's just some crazy shooter. He's a totally unpolitical person. So all of it is just lie after lie after lie.
So why? Okay, let's step back, everyone. Why is the FBI lying to us?
Yes, yeah. Well, very good question. Very, very, very good question. What exactly are they trying to hide? Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I mean, there's certainly, again, a couple of minutes ago, the usual incompetence that we're used to now. Okay. Did somebody say, I'm going to go for a smoke break? I'm going to turn off the reconnaissance of or the third guy on the roof, he just left early. I mean,
Right.
the most important political figure of the moment is a few hundred meters away from you, and you went for a smoke break.
Right. Yeah. I'm not buying the.
I mean, what I'm saying is,
all right. But I'm not buying the incompetence theory.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to get that off the table.
Right.
Okay?
No, that's right. Because the people always say this, the incompetence, because the reason why people resort to that explanation is that it's the easiest. Well, oh yeah, it was just incompetence. Some idiot, went out for a smoke, or some idiot fell asleep in front of the monitoring screen. Then you say, well, that was amazing how quickly they managed to kill him. Boom, one shot, and the security guard managed to get the right, killed him right away. So they were able to identify where he was very quickly and very efficiently. One shot, and he was dead. So you know they when they want to be, they're not incompetent. They can be highly competent. So that's why the incompetence theory, I'm just not buying it. I have to think, and I mean, as you said, we can't really speculate because we just don't know that they're covering something up, that there's more to it than that.
Okay.
He
All right.
was
I
in,
think
in contact with people in some ways may be associated with the federal government, and they want to cover that up because it's otherwise obviously it's a huge scandal.
oh, I can't disagree with that. I don't know what they're covering up, but given the evidence that has been presented to us by a podcaster now,
Right,
okay,
right, right.
there's a cover up. What are you covering up? That's what
Exactly.
we need to
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Anyway, let's take a look at some of the gagglers and some of the comments that they've made. These are the people who contribute to our gaggle community, and above all, they contribute to the tip jar, and they contribute to the upkeep of these dogs who are perpetually dissatisfied. And so, Dan Rock, thank you. Hello, Dan Rock. It says, "Good evening, all. George Peter, is Trump with his actions endorsing a Rubio presidency over a Vance one?" Well, that's an interesting one. Um, and I, that's a really interesting.
Well, I mean, at this point, I'm sorry. Maybe this is overdone on my part. I mean, it's very far away. We still have the midterms coming up, but the way things are going, who will want his endorsement?
Well, well, that is a long way away. But the question isn't. The question is he does he want Rubio over Vance? And I think that's a very interesting argument because he is pursuing right now a foreign policy that's more aligned with Rubio's than with Vance's. I mean, Vance, we've been led to believe, and there's no reason not to believe it, is much more of a foreign policy restrained person, not much more of a non-interventionist against color revolutions, against all of that, than Rubio is. But at the moment, this seems to be a Rubio
Well,
policy that Trump has embarked on. So I think it does
it's
look
a valid question.
Rubio is in the ascendant, and Vance is kind of in the background.
Yes, but this tells us something very important, if true, is then what about MAGA? Because certainly MAGA doesn't like Rubio for very
Mhm.
good reasons.
Right,
Okay, people are furious that Trump is supporting Lindsey Graham,
right.
but Vance comes from, at least nominally, from the MAGA movement. Is Trump writing off the MAGA movement? That's really the question, I think.
Well, that's also very intriguing because when he
Oh, I
was
like this. Rubio has zero chance. I agree, 100%, zero chance, and he's too
um,
short.
there is that. On the other hand, he's very smooth. He's very polished. Um,
Nice suits, good suits.
yes, smooth, polished, well spoken. And it's obviously when it comes to foreign affairs, he's comes across as very
He's
knowledgeable.
well versed, as we would say in
Yeah,
the.
that's right. Very knowledgeable. Um, yes, I mean, I think if one looks at the Republican Party and think that um, the where is the Republican Party? Yeah, in theory, yeah, they would go for Vance, but then the question is, what role is Trump going to play in all this? I wouldn't go as far as you have in saying no one wants to associate with
Well,
Trump.
given
It's not what
given the data points that we have
right,
now,
yeah,
and you
yeah,
pointed
but
out,
I
I
think
agree. Everyone, even talking about the midterms, is we're
it's a
year
long
away.
way. It's a long way away.
Well, there's a comment here. I'm sorry to interrupt here. This is from Blue Sky Above, I think. There's a clear difference between MAGA and America First. MAGA supports Trump. America First is disenchanted. That's an interesting
right.
characterization.
No,
I'm
that's a
not sure
fair
I
point.
agree with
Yeah.
it, but that's an interesting characterization.
That is interesting. I, I mean, it's a very interesting thing. I mean, it's like, does um, following a presidency, following a successful presidency, has like somebody who's completed the 2 terms, or basically, as in Trump's case, will have completed the term. Has a vice president ever been defeated? Now, vice presidents have in successive elections been defeated. Like Dan Quayle had been a vice president, but he never. Um,
Well,
in
Walter
96,
Mondale. Walter
well,
Mondale.
Walter Mondale did. No, he was the successor. He did. He got. No, I'm not saying he would in terms of winning the general election, but
Get
he denied the nomination of the party.
George H. Bush.
He was successful. But George H.W. Bush was successful. He got the nomination immediately after Reagan. Mondale got it immediately after Carter. Um, but with Quayle, there was a skip. They skipped an election. So 92, George H.W. Bush. 96 is when Quayle ran. Quayle didn't get it. Clinton, Al Gore was the vice president. So that's, it's quite difficult to knock over a vice president. That doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. But
Well, I mean,
generally, a vice president has the inside track.
yeah, but I think we have to look at a unique scenario here, because J.D. Vance is, at least nominally speaking, he's not from the establishment. At least that's not how he presents himself, and he's not perceived as such. He may be seen as such
Right.
by the time he tries to make a run, but I think this is very different, because and this goes back to what Blue Sky was talking about. We have an America First agenda. We have MAGA. They're obviously interwoven, but there are some of those that are much more purist in policy, and others that are part of maybe what detractors call the Trump cult. So that makes it a little bit different and more confusing.
That's right. I think that's why it is going to be quite complicated. The point, however, is this: Vance hasn't in any way really made a huge case for himself.
Nope.
I mean, he wrote that book, which was obviously very successful. But other than that, he really hasn't distinguished himself. So, nor has he got a particularly, charismatic, winning personality.
What's his bailiwick? Does he have one?
Exactly.
And, if he were smart, he would do the affordability.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I'm into. Affordability. Get away from foreign policy, because it's a disaster. Okay.
Right. No,
affordability. That's what
I think so. But that's why now the advantage I think Rubio is going to have is that Rubio is, relative to Vance, he's quite a senior political figure. He's been around for many years. He was a senior senator. He'd run for president, unsuccessful, but he'd run for president. He had been Secretary of State. The Secretary of State is far more important than a vice president. He's the Secretary of State's involved, and a national security advisor. He'd been, he'd been involved in policy making. So, George H.W. Bush, well, he'd been vice president for 8 years, but he had also a distinguished political career before that. He'd been head of the CIA.
Congressman.
He'd been a congressman. He had been the chairman of the GOP. He was the first U.S. ambassador to China. He'd been, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. So he had done things before that. So he kind of had some credentials. Vance is the problem. He doesn't really have that many credentials. It's a meteoric rise. I mean, just boom. He wrote a book, and everybody loved him. He became a senator, and it was immediately named vice president. So that's why I think it's by no means obvious that that Vance has the inside track.
And considering people use the term neocon, fine with me. But it's more, I look at more as the establishment. They are ascendant now, at least in policy making.
Yeah.
No, I mean that's the problem with the conservatives, MAGA, America First. They're not all on the same page. They're in different universes right now.
Right.
And and Marco Rubio obviously has the inside track, as he has the establishment behind.
That's right. I think that's going to be a big factor. Anyway, Cynthia, always very good to see you, Cynthia. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for your generosity. And Cynthia says Robert Barnes said that one of the few election precincts that was totally happy with Trump was the one located where The Sopranos was filmed, suggesting the mob approves of his trade tactics and expects to profit from them. Weaponizing sanctions and tariffs is what mobsters do. They also lawlessly blow up boats, praising describe head choppers as tough guys. So Trump ought to tone down his mob rhetoric before he finds himself in jail, if not the Hague.
Well, and did Barnes say that approvingly or just?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I didn't hear him
I
say
we need context. Okay, we've talked to him before, so
that. That's right. It's an interesting issue though because um, there are things that obviously people would like about Trump. I'm not sure they'll go for the jihadi thing. I mean, I think that's a little hard to swallow. But on the other hand, bashing Venezuela, ultimately there just isn't much of a Maduro constituency in the United States. However unjustified and however outrageous and unreasonable attacking Venezuela would be, I think a lot of Americans are just going to approve of that. Yeah, basically, this is our backyard, and we can't have commies, drug dealers, drug traffickers,
well, but yeah, but on the other
people,
side,
people who look strange with these thick mustaches, messing things up. So I think Trump may have more of a mandate or more of a popular support for hitting Venezuela than he would for hitting Iran, because that's a long way away, and people don't see why we should be hitting Iran.
it gets down to political principles. I think people will say, you said you weren't going to go get into these wars, and you're breaking your word right now. I think that is maybe the litmus test. Okay. Also, all of us are aware of how the establishment sells these wars. Okay. I mean, Hezbollah actually is involved now with Maduro, with this
Right.
ridiculous
Yeah.
narratives.
No.
Okay. And I'm not faulting people, but I mean they get they're being like a laser beam, being this issue of national security, narco terrorism. I mean, we've seen this before every single time. Okay, there's nothing new here, but it's going to be those people who say, "But you said,"
Right. But you're
and
right.
that might be the issue of people say. I mean, you can't make excuses, okay? But
Yeah, but
but this,
I think you know where there is a distinction between Latin America and Central America and elsewhere. I think Ukraine. Yeah, I don't think there's any support at all for messing around in Ukraine. I don't think there's any support for hitting Iran. But when it comes to Latin America and Central America, I think there is still a feeling that, hey, this is our backyard. I don't know. I don't think Trump will have that much opposition on this issue of Maduro. That doesn't mean he's going to succeed. I don't think he is going to succeed, but I don't think there'll be that much opposition to it as there is on other things. And so, yeah, principle, but they'll say, hey, but this is our hemisphere. This belongs to us. We own it, and we still don't like Castro in our neighborhood, and we still don't like the fact that we gave up the Panama Canal. I think that there's just a difference between this and the other wars and interventions.
I'm not sure I agree,
All
but
right. Well,
we're going to see where it goes.
we're gonna see where,
As we both have agreed, is that this an anti-war. It's remarkable for a country that is exports so much chaos into the world and instability. You still have a strong, consistent constituency in the United States saying this is wrong. It never works out well for those
right,
of
but
us.
let's look at the example of Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan's war against Nicaragua wasn't unpopular. It was a ridiculous war. It was an outrageous war, but it fundamentally wasn't unpopular in the way that his intervention in Lebanon was unpopular.
Well, that
Um,
was a failure too.
that was a
Okay.
complete failure. Well, even Nicaragua wasn't exactly a success. I mean,
Yeah,
but
but I mean, what was the data point that it was a failure in Nicaragua? I don't think very many people could put their finger on it. Killing a lot, having a U.S.
right.
Marine killed en masse, yeah, that was a data point. Okay.
Well, the failure with Nicaragua was that they didn't actually get rid of Ortega. I mean, this went on through the 1980s, and Ortega survived despite everything that was thrown at him. And of course, it was a very immoral war in every way. It was an immoral war. I mean. Launching essentially this guerrilla war, which was just created chaos. I mean, it just absolute chaos and violence in Nicaragua. And the thesis that Nicaragua posed any kind of a threat to the United States was ludicrous. But it wasn't. But I don't think it was the left. The left were against it, and that's true that the left were against it. But in this case, I'm not sure the left is going to support.
Yeah,
Very much.
we can go back to Nicaragua and Ronald Reagan, which is it's a fair point. But there's so much people again for those that are interested. There's so much more access to more information and different and conflicting opinions, and once you're exposed to it, I mean, George and I are big fans of the Gray Zone. Max Blumenthal just came out with a very short documentary video about how much of a sham this is, and this is what a lot of MAGA people like. They want to know the truth about American foreign intervention. So I don't know. The jury's out on this one. I think the principle of anti-intervention is pretty strong right now, and it's not going to trump. Well, it's in our hemisphere. I don't think people think about it that way.
I do think that. I absolutely do think that. I do think that
Everybody
there's a
finally
difference.
got George and I to disagree, and it took an hour and a half.
Right. Because I do think that Americans just say, the issue of Latin and Central America, that goes back many, many decades. And throughout those decades, everything that the United States was doing was never unpopular. I mean, remember back in the 1960s, when basically the United States was just organizing coup after coup after coup within Latin America because of Castro, the fear that Castro poses this huge threat to United States hegemony in Latin America. But it was always popular.
No,
So,
I wouldn't say it was popular. It wasn't unpopular.
well, it wasn't,
Because
but that's
at
different.
the same time, you had Americans dying in Vietnam. Now,
But
if
that's
you would-
different. Exactly. Vietnam was unpopular, or became eventually unpopular, because that's 13,000 miles away. So yeah, hey, Vietnam, you can't mess around there in the jungles of Southeast Asia. That's got nothing to do with America. But hey, this is our backyard. Yeah, Richard Nixon, 1973, height of Watergate. The one thing that Nixon did that wasn't unpopular, even the media weren't unhappy with him, is organizing the coup against Allende. Basically the Americans overthrew Allende. He didn't get any negative coverage for that. We had nothing to do with it. Okay, well, the American government had nothing to do with it. Okay.
until those that wanted to know found out what really happened. Okay, and then it became
Exactly.
unpopular. But only
Exactly.
with the segment right now. I think it's important to make these comparisons, but we live in such a different information environment right now. Okay, and that's why the blowing up of these boats and the weird legal cases that they're presenting. I think it is different, and I think those that do enough time, and it's very difficult for most people to delve into these things. It's just fundamentally a sham. Okay,
It's a sham, but Trump has not really suffered the consequence of what is basically outrageous. I mean, you're basically just
I don't
blowing.
know. We're almost out of time, George. I want to ask you a quick question since we're on Venezuela. Do you think what is the likelihood that Trump is going to pursue some kind of kinetic, as I like to say, move to push back the left? Because he had a bad week last week, he had a really bad week.
Right.
What is the likelihood that will be part of his political calculus?
I think it's quite likely. I think that their first option will be to try to organize a coup, and if that doesn't work,
Decapitation.
it won't work. It hasn't worked enough. Is the assassination? I mean, by designating this the organization, this narco-terrorist organization, a international terrorist organization, which is what they did yesterday. And Maduro is the head of that. So essentially, they now say Maduro is an international terrorist. He's like an Osama bin Laden figure. That means we can just take him out anytime we want.
It means you can't walk it back.
Right, exactly. So I think that most likely, the first option will be to try to assassinate him before they start launching missile strikes against Venezuela. They'll try to assassinate him, and if that doesn't work, then I think they're going to start hitting him with missiles. No invasion, but I think they're going to do with that. Anyway, just before we go, Dan Rock, thank you very much for your generosity. I really appreciate it. And says, thank you for answering my question. My question wasn't so much personal about Rubio Vance, but direction that each represent. And I think we attempted to answer that question. Anyway, thank you very much, everybody who joined us. Thank you so much for all of your really interesting and fascinating, intriguing questions and comments. And we will be back same time next Monday, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And then please join me for my solo live stream tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Until then, all the best. Good night. Bye-bye. See you soon. And we're out. Yeah. I think we're out. Yeah.
No, it still says live.
Okay. Well, then we're not out. All right. Let me then see. All right. End stream. We're still live. All right. Let me then. What I'll do is.
Well, I'm still live. All right, everybody. George apparently hit the wrong button, so I'm going to sign off here. We'll see you all next week.